In this video, I'm going to be covering the installation of soft closing drawer slides, metal drawer slides on frameless cabinet. There's a lot of help available with instructions online, but there are some things with regards to planning, design, and little things that I haven't found easily that I'm going to be covering in this video. Now, whether we talk about face frame or frameless cabinet, there are typically two types of carcasses. One type of carcass, one type of cabinet could have all the drawers behind the door like this. And there's another typical kind of carcass where you have a special drawer on the top which is covered with drawer fronts, and then you have a door underneath it behind which you could have more drawers or shelves, so to speak. So depending upon the design, the construction or the design of the drawers, not only the drawers would change, but also the positioning and the design of drawer slides could change. This is the corresponding design for the carcass for the two types of cabinets I've shown. This type of cabinet has a horizontal slat right here, which separates the drawer area from the door area. So the drawer or the special drawer with the drawer front goes on the top, and the door is what covers the bottom part of the carcass. And typically used for base cabinets. This is the kind of carcass that is entirely covered with door from top to bottom, and the drawers could be anywhere behind the door, either on the top or bottom, wherever we wish. This is typically a wall cabinet design, but we can also use it as base cabinet if needed. My cabinets are designed like this, with the carcass that doesn't have a special drawer. So that's how my cabinets are designed. So the door covers the entire cabinet from top to bottom. When we do use this kind of design where the door covers the cabinet from top to bottom, there are two areas where we have to be careful. One is with the dimensioning of the drawers themselves, and second is with the positioning of the drawers. The reason we have to be careful with the dimensioning of the drawers is because we cannot just install the slide straight against the cabinet wall, because as we try to open the drawer, it's going to hit the door, and that's why we have to bring the slide a little bit ahead, away from the wall. And for that, I'm using this 1/2-inch shim like this to bring the drawer slide ahead so it can open without obstruction. And that's why we have to dimension the drawer accordingly, because if I'm putting 1/2-inch shim plus the 1/2 inch of the drawer slide itself, that means I'm using up 1-inch space over here, which I have to reduce from the width of the drawer itself. And if I do it on both sides, then I have to reduce 2 inches, 1 inch over here and 1 inch over on this side for the width of the drawer. Or I might decide to put the shim only on one side, so I'll have to reduce 1 inch over here, and I can put the drawer slide directly on this side with no shim, and that'll be 1/2 inch. So I have to reduce 1.5 inch from the width of the drawer. The reason I have to be careful about the positioning of the drawers is because of this hinge plate that sits on the side wall of the cabinet. I have to know prior to installation, the way I will be designing this is to make sure that my drawer slides will be either on the top or the bottom of the hinge plate. It shouldn't be falling somehow on top of the hinge plate while installation. In fact, this is the exact mistake I did while doing this cabinet. I actually wanted this drawer to be shifted upwards with only 1/2 inch space from the top, but I couldn't because this hinge plate was in my way. So now I'm forced to pull the drawer down and losing some space down here. Now let's look at the drawer slides themselves and try to understand them. This is a 16-inch full extension side mount soft close drawer slides from High Point. Comes with two drawer slides. It has a set of screws that they give with the slides. Now it's called side mount because it sits on the side of the cabinet wall, and it's called full extension probably because this whole thing extends all the way out, typically almost bringing the drawer almost out of the cabinet, so to speak. The side that screws into the side wall of the cabinet is this big one over here, and the side that screws into the drawer themselves is this small one over here. Now there's a lot of holes for screws on the side, on the back of the slide, but the ones that are recommended to use are these ones, this one, and this one. Why? Because these are adjustable tabs that go in and out basically, especially if the drawer is a little bit smaller, then these come out, so to speak. If I screw into these other holes, I won't have that adjustability basically. So every time screw in on these holes, this one over here, this one over here, this one over here, which are pretty much the edge hole of the tabs over here. On the drawer themselves, the recommended screwing holes are these ones over here on the side that go horizontally with the slide itself. So this one over here, this one over here, and this one over here. Why? Because I can, with this, I can have some degree of adjustability. If the drawer is a little bit too much in the front or too much in the back, I can push the drawer back and forth to make sure the drawer is aligned. The front edge of the drawer basically is aligned with the front edge of this slide over here. The last observation about this, looks like there are three moving parts to this. The base, and then this part, and then this part. All of them move independently. The only part that I can easily remove is this last smaller moving part. So I just push the tab over here, push it down, and the whole thing comes out. And this will be used for installation later on. And then if I want to put it back, I just basically slide it in, and it just snaps back in, and it won't come out again until I push this tab again. Since I'm using the standard Blum hinges on this cabinet, I'll have to use the shims as explained before with the drawer slides. In this cabinet, I'm using the axiomat hinges, and this door goes 270 degrees all the way back. So this door is not going to be in my way while opening the drawer, so I don't have to use the shims on this cabinet. The biggest challenge, and I think the only critical part in installing these drawer slides, is the fact that we have to keep these slides stable on the wall of the cabinet without moving it or tilting it, so we can screw it in as horizontal as possible. And there are several ways to do that. Some people use plywood to hold the slide in place. There are other methods probably. But I went ahead and invested in this Kreg drawer jigs. These are very simple to use, especially on a frameless cabinet. All we do is clamp this jig onto the side of the cabinet, and you have a horizontal surface to screw in the drawer slide, and then we rotate it or reverse it, basically clamp it again, and now we have the ability to hold the drawer while we screw the drawer in. So it's pretty easy. There are instructions available online. I'm not going to get into details of that on how to use this jig. Now I have my jig set up. This is a horizontal surface that's going to hold my shim as well as hold my drawer slide. The way I'm going to screw this is to have the shim maybe about 1/16 or maximum 1/8 of an inch behind the surface of the cabinet, and the drawer slide is going to align completely perfectly with the shim itself. So the whole thing, the combination of these two, will be 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch behind the surface of the cabinet. So what I have to do first is glue and put in a set of screws through the shim to attach the shim to the carcass wall. And then I have to take another set of screws, basically the screws that came with the drawer slides, and screw the drawer slide into the shim, through the shim, into the carcass. So I'll have two sets of screws. All I need to do is make sure that those two sets of screws don't accidentally overlap each other first. In order to do that, I have to first mark the location of the screw holes for the drawer slide. So what I do for that is first I have to take out the third part of the drawer slide, the small part of the drawer slide. This is the narrowest part of the drawer slide, is the part that attaches to the drawer itself. So I don't need it right now. So I'm going to take it out like I shown before. Take this part out and keep it on the side. As soon as I take that part out, you'll notice that it's stuck. To take that out, there's a knob over here. I only have to push it down. Once I push it down, it goes back up. And now I have the freedom to take it all the way back, and it's aligned over here. Next, what I do is align my front of the drawer slide with the shim, like I explained before, and just take a pencil and mark the holes. This is the first screw position, and I'll have to move this to find the second screw position right here, and move it again. It's hidden behind, so I have to move this slide up and down to find the third screw position roughly. I took it out of this position to mark the screw holes, but it's actually easier to keep this in the position like this and slide the window and mark the holes right here, so we have the exact positioning of the holes. Now that I have marked the holes, I know these are the locations where I need to screw in the drawer slide. So all I have to make sure is I don't put screws in these locations while I stick this shim into the cabinet wall. I'll be using these Spax 1-inch number 8 construction screws. To make sure that these screws don't stick out and easily go in, I'm going to be using my countersink drill bit into a few locations on my shim and then screw it in. Now that I have the shim secured, it's time to put the drawer slide in. I'll already have my markings that I did before through the holes. All I have to do is align the drawer slide exactly with the shim and then put the screws provided with the drawer slides. Before I put the screws in, I'm going to go ahead and put some pilot hole with my pilot drill bit, and then I'm going to screw them in. While I held this with a clamp, I went ahead and did 2 pilot holes for the very first one and the second one and drilled them in. And now since this is secured, I went to the third one and drilled the third pilot hole and screwed that in. I have one side of the drawer slide done. I'm not going to disturb this clamp. I'm going to put the other side in now. The one thing to remember is before we put this jig on, I knew exactly where to put the jig on. So usually by design, we would know that the first drawer is possibly 4-inch below from the top of the cabinet. The second drawer is possibly, let's say, 10-inch below, whatever the design may be. But in my case, if as I mentioned before, I did a mistake, I have the hinge in my way, so I can't really put my drawer slide where I had expected or planned to be. So I had to push it down. So whatever this distance is, I have to basically transfer over here. So first thing I do is take a measuring tape and basically make a rough measurement from the jig, the top of the jig to the top of the cabinet, and just transfer it over here and put a jig in here first. After I have put the second jig on the other side, I have to make sure these 2 jigs are level with each other. In order to do that, what I'm doing is putting the drawer in on top of the jig, just sitting it like this, and all I have to do is take a level like this, a torpedo level, put it on the top, see what the level is, put it on the bottom, the very bottom, see what the level is, and whatever that level is, that's my reference level. So once I get that reference level, I just transfer it over here on the drawer. If there's too much difference, then I'm going to adjust my other jig to make it level with my reference levels. Once I'm satisfied with the level of this jig and everything is secured, I repeat the exact same procedure that I did over here, first with the shim and then put the drawer slide in on the other side. Now I have both the drawer slides into the cabinet wall. Now comes the cool part. All I have to do is take this jig, take it out, and reverse it. As I reverse it, there's this lines over here. This line is 1 and this line says 2 over there. All I do is reverse it and make sure that I am aligned with line 2 at the edge of the cabinet, like this. clamp it again. The same for the other side. Align the number 2 line with the front edge of the cabinet. What this has done is essentially given me a platform to hold the drawer so I can screw in the drawer. But before I screw in the drawer, I need to put back these little things that I took out from the drawer slides. All I do is slide it in. Like this. There's a little plastic knob right here that goes at the end of the drawer slide. So that's how I know this side goes in first. This plastic knob. Locks in. Now I have this, both the slides out. I take my drawer, just line it up. The front of the drawer should line up with the front of the drawer slide right here, exactly. And like I mentioned before, there are 3 possible places, but I'm going to be using this horizontal position to screw it in. And there's one over here, one over here, and there's one more through a sort of a window I can see. I just have to adjust the drawer back and forth to reach that. So I'll do this one, first one, then do the second one, and do the third one. So I'll do the first one on both sides to keep it stable, then do the other 2. So here's the finished drawer. I'm done with the first drawer now. I'm going to move on to my second cabinet, which has 2 drawers. One critical thing about drawers is that we always design drawers from the top to bottom, and when we install drawers, it's from bottom to top. So for example, if we have 5-inch drawers, if we want, let's say 5-inch drawers, and if the cabinet is, let's say hypothetically, filled with drawers, or is supposed to be filled with drawers, you put 5-inch from the top, and with half an inch gap in between, maybe you could fit 3 drawers here, and whatever space is left could be used for the last drawer. It could be bigger than the other drawers. So in other words, we design drawers from the top and go towards the bottom. But when we install drawers, we always start from the bottom and go towards up. It's easier to install that way. Now, when we install the bottom drawer first, I cannot really use my Kreg jig, and in fact there is no necessity really to use the Kreg jig because I have the bottom base to support my drawer. All I need is one thing. I need a support, a gap here that can support both my drawer slide as well as the part of a drawer. Here you see I'm using a shim, so to speak, which is supporting my drawer slide as well as part of the drawer, and there's a slight gap in between over here, and again over here the drawer is sitting on the shim, and the shim is supporting the shim is wide enough to support the drawer slide as well as the drawer. So whatever the case, it could be one continuous shim or a piece of plywood or broken into 2 parts on each side. Whatever the case, whatever we use needs to support or both the drawer slide and the drawer itself. Now I'm going to go ahead and install this drawer using exactly the same procedure as the previous installation. The only difference being that I don't have to use the shims on the side in this installation. Because like I said, the drawer rotates 270 degrees and it's not really in my way. So I can directly screw in the drawer slide into the cabinet wall. Other than that, everything else is exactly the same procedure. Here's my finished bottom drawer. It was pretty quick. One thing to note is that we're not using this jig, but because we have the base of the cabinet, like I said. But this jig was also helpful in turning around and hold the drawer outside the inner space of the cabinet. Here, what I did is that since I don't have the jig to hold the drawer all the way outside, so I took the drawer out once I finished putting the slides on the two sides of the wall of the cabinet. I took the drawer out just a little bit, enough to put the first screw in on both sides. Once I put the first screw in on both sides, I pulled it out a little bit more, to enough to put the second screw in comfortably on both sides. And then I pulled it out more all the way out to put the third screw in on both sides. That's how I managed putting the screw in on the side of the drawers. And then later on, we take these shims out, and now the drawer should work flawlessly. Now I'm going to be installing my third and final drawer at about 12 inches height from the bottom. This time I will be able to use my jig. Again, the same procedure here, except the fact that I'm not going to be using this shim like in this cabinet. So it's a little bit more easier and straightforward installation. So here's my third and final drawer installed. Once I put the door in, I tried to close it, and I found another big error that I made. Again, I did not account for the hinge construction. This hinge has sort of a thick plate over here, which when closed is colliding with the drawer itself, and so the drawer is not closing. So again, poor design on my part, something to learn for future. The only solution I have is to unscrew this drawer and push it back maybe about 1/4 of an inch. I have enough space on the back, about 3/4 of an inch, so I can just push this drawer back and that should solve the problem. So I went ahead and fixed this drawer, basically disassembled the whole thing and pushed the whole system back and reinstalled it, keeping half an inch space. So I shouldn't have that issue anymore. So here's my 3 finished drawers. I'm going to give some closing thoughts before I end the video. First of all, like I showed, the construction of the hinge, the thickness of the hinge, the positioning of the hinge, the type of hinge, it has a direct effect on the dimensioning as well as positioning of the drawer. So that has to be planned properly before the drawer is installed. Either the hinge locations have to be changed or the drawer slide locations have to be changed. Usually it's easier to change the drawer slide location than hinge location. Secondly, I had mentioned before that the part of the drawer slide that actually holds the drawer, I had mentioned before to use these holes, the horizontal holes here, here, and here. But once the drawer is held strongly, there is no reason not to put in additional screws in to make it even stronger hold, so to speak. Next, I also went ahead and used this WD-40. It's a long-term corrosion inhibitor. It helps protect from corrosion, especially since I'm going to be keeping these cabinets outdoors. And the last thing I wanted to point out is that there's also these kind of steel metal drawers that are available. This is made by Link. I think I'll put a link for that in the description. But this is also an option, and this is a more easier, although could be expensive, but it's a little bit easier installation, and the installation instructions come with it. But I just wanted to point out that this is an option other than the wooden drawers that I have just showed. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching.